Pause for a moment. Imagine this. A week after the election, the headlines change. Mamdani supporters in shock. They now realize they've been deceived. That sentence spreads across social media like lightning. The streets are quiet, but the eyes speak. Everyone is asking the same question. How did the promise of change once again end up in the hands of the old system? Hello, today I'm not just going to tell you the news, but a lesson. Because in politics, the most dangerous weapon isn't always a lie. Sometimes it's hope. False hope destroys more than any false promise ever could. For years, Zohran Mamdani's supporters lived on that hope. He was the voice of the people, the man who would change the system from within. But now, as the elections are over, everyone is searching for the answer to one question. Why didn't the system change? The answer is simple: because the system still writes the rules. Mamdani's vision was big, but the game board is even bigger. Every new leader begins as a dream and ends as a mechanism. Washington, New York, even Kampala, the same script everywhere. The people believe, the system rules, and now people are beginning to wonder. Maybe it's not that the leaders are being bought. Maybe it's that the rules of the game never really change. Those close to Mamdani say he still stands by his mission, but reality tells another story. Committees, compromises, bureaucracy. These are the invisible walls that suffocate bold ideas. The more he says, for the people, the more the system responds according to the rules. Yes, he is still fighting, but the battle is no longer in the streets. It's in the rooms, in the papers, between the lines, and the people feel it. One young man's post has gone viral. We asked for change, but the only thing that changed were the faces. That sentence has now become a slogan for an entire generation. Because in politics, the biggest disappointment isn't failure, it's repetition. The same play, different actors. But this time, something is different. People are no longer silent. They're asking, if Mamdani couldn't change it, who can? That question is now the system's most dangerous weapon, because when a people lose faith, they stop obeying. Mamdani understands this, and now he speaks differently. No longer about reform from within, but about awakening from within. He says, the system that couldn't change us woke us. This is the beginning of a new chapter. People are no longer waiting for a leader. They're starting to see themselves as leaders. And that's the system's greatest fear, because a thinking people cannot be controlled. Mamdani is now more than a politician. He's a symbol. For some, his name means disappointment. For others, it still means hope. But one thing is certain: this story isn't over. Because every time the system wins, the people get a little wiser. And maybe, just maybe, this time, the ending will be different. Stay, because I'm about to reveal that hidden plan, what's really happening behind the silence, and why Mamdani still remains the symbol of hope. Now let's take a closer look at what's happening behind the scenes, because what you see on stage and what happens behind the curtain are two completely different worlds. During his campaign, Mamdani promised ordinary people that he would change the system from within. But in reality, when the system lets you in, it takes away your weapons. Behind every decision lies a committee. Behind every meeting hides a procedure, and behind every word stands 1,000 rules. These rules, on paper, create the illusion of stability, but in truth, they are traps designed to prevent change. In his first months, Mamdani got lost in this labyrinth. He wants to speak, but they find subtler ways to silence him. Not through censorship or open pressure, but through an invisible mechanism of delay. Decisions drag on, reforms stall, and eventually, the people grow tired. On social media, someone writes, "They're not deceiving us with lies anymore. They're deceiving us with silence." This is the most dangerous stage, because the people are no longer angry. They're exhausted. And when a tired nation loses its belief, no leader can win it back. Mamdani understands this. He tells his team, "We cannot change this system from within, because it was built not to change." That sentence is now a frightening signal for many inside his party, because it means he's shifting from reform to revolution. But this isn't a revolution of the streets, it's a revolution of thought. He says openly, "I'm not fighting against the system, I'm fighting against its soul." Few people in politics have the courage to say that. From Washington to Kampala to Dakar, many power circles are uneasy with his words. Because such an idea is contagious, he asks people a simple question: why are we waiting for permission to change? That question now echoes in the minds of thousands of young people. They begin to realize that politics isn't just about elections, it's a way of life. Every decision made, every voice not heard, every word spoken or left unsaid, all of it is a political stance. Mamdani teaches this to society, and it wakes many up. For years, people were told that power exists above them, but he says, the power above survives only with the consent of those below. In other words, what the system fears most isn't noise, it's awareness. He knows that the system cannot change until the people's mindset does. That's why he now talks less about politics and more about philosophy. In his speeches, he uses the word state less and the word people more. Because real change doesn't start with laws, it starts with values. His new tone confuses many. Some say he's distancing himself from politics, but in truth, he's redefining what politics means. The goal is no longer the seat, it's the state of mind. And as this idea takes root among the people, the system's foundations begin to shake. Today, young people in universities debate about Mamdani, sharing his words across social media. They're no longer following a leader, they're spreading an idea. It's a quiet but unstoppable power, because ideas can't be destroyed by criticism, pressure, or censorship. In fact, the more resistance they face, the stronger they grow. After every one of Mamdani's speeches, the system grows more uneasy, because he's not fighting politicians, he's fighting the boundaries of people's minds. This struggle creates a silent but deep awakening. Everyone now understands that this story isn't just about an election, it's about the transformation of an entire era. Mamdani's goal is not to win. He wants people to win over themselves, because once a nation conquers its own fear, no one can ever rule over it again. Mamdani's silence now speaks louder than ever. Even when he doesn't talk, people listen, because around his name, an idea, an energy, a movement has formed. This is no longer just the story of a politician. It's the story of a society rediscovering its own power. Mamdani once spoke of reform, but now he speaks of awakening. This change in tone stirs both curiosity and fear among people, because he's exposing the system's core flaw, the mechanism that controls the people's energy through fear. He says, if they're trying to scare you, it means you're already powerful. That sentence spreads like lightning across social media. Young people post it as their status, use it in videos, paint it on walls, because that simple phrase awakens the suppressed strength inside each of them. They're realizing that the system only survives through silence. Every time someone speaks, something changes. But this time, people don't just want to speak, they want to understand. Mamdani sees this difference and simplifies his message. He says, if politics makes people's lives harder, then it's no longer governance, it's control. Those words make him a target in many circles, because such a bold statement unsettles not only the public, but also the elite. In Parliament, whispers about him grow louder. Some politicians say, he's going too far. But in truth, Mamdani is just getting started. He knows that every real change looks radical at first. But what's truly radical isn't the idea, it's those who try to hide it. His speeches no longer sound like political programs, but like calls to action. He doesn't ask the people for votes, he asks them to think. If an idea scares you, he says, it means it can change you. People embrace that because they no longer want stability. They want results. Stability has given them the same problems, the same faces, the same speeches for years. Now, they crave change. This isn't just a political demand, it's an emotional hunger. People want to rediscover meaning in their lives. Mamdani understands this feeling deeply. He says, revolution doesn't start in the streets, it starts in the mind. That becomes the motto of his new phase. He's not just trying to change politics, he's trying to change the foundation of thought itself. His words are quoted in universities, analyzed on television debates, yet he attends none of them. Because his goal is no longer to argue, it's to awaken. His silence confuses many. Some say he's stepping away from the system. Others believe he's quietly building a new game within it. But the truth is, Mamdani isn't retreating or attacking. He's transforming. And this transformation isn't limited to him. His followers are no longer behaving like political supporters. They've become carriers of an idea. On social media, in streets, in universities, they're no longer talking about changing the system, but about changing the person, because they understand that the system begins within the individual. That's where Mamdani's real impact lies. He helps people see their own power. He once said, "Don't follow me, try to understand me." A simple but profound message, because leadership is no longer about obedience, it's about sharing. He doesn't hand his ideas to people, he plants them in them. And that, in truth, is the most dangerous kind of change. Because when ideas fall into the hands of the people, The system's end draws near. Now, people are no longer listening to politicians. They're listening to each other. That's Mamdani's greatest achievement. He's taught people to hear one another. And that, quietly but powerfully, is how revolutions begin. Mamdani is no longer seen merely as a politician or a professor. He is now the center of an intellectual movement. When his name is mentioned, people don't just think of one person, but of an entire idea, because he has proven one thing: a person who no longer fears the system is no longer part of it. In every speech, he asks the same simple yet unsettling question: why are we searching for our destiny in someone else's plans? That question now echoes through the streets of Africa, in universities, on radio stations, even in markets. People see their own lives reflected in his words, because he doesn't speak in distant theories. He talks about everyday life, about bread, about hope, about silence. He says, if you wake up every morning facing the same problems, then the system is working exactly as it was designed, to keep you there. That sentence shakes many. They realize that change will never come from above, because those at the top fear losing what they have. Mamdani has turned that fear into a weapon. He tells young people, if the system fears you, it means you already have power. These words ignite a revolution in the minds of the youth. They no longer see politics as a game for the powerful. They understand now that every voice, every question, every act of refusal is a form of politics. He calls this awakening the freedom of thought, because to him, true freedom begins in the mind. If someone tells you what to think, he says, you are no longer free. That line is now written on the walls of many university classrooms. But as his ideas spread, so do the pressures. International organizations react to his speeches, and some Western media label him a radical populist. But the people laugh at those labels, because they know that sometimes being radical simply means being honest. Mamdani, however, remains calm under this pressure. He once told a journalist, if your truth makes someone uncomfortable, it means you're on the right path. Such words make him a target of criticism, yet they also turn him into a source of inspiration for millions. His speeches are now discussed not only across Africa, but around the world. In European universities, his ideas have become academic topics. In Asia, student movements quote his thoughts. Mamdani's influence has crossed borders because he addresses a universal issue, the freedom of human thought. He says, we haven't been given freedom, we've been given its illusion. That sentence makes everyone think, because many realize that the most dangerous chain can sometimes be the one disguised as freedom itself. His goal is to expose that illusion, to pull people out of their comfortable captivity. Some call him ambitious, but he replies, if you don't want to change your destiny, someone else will decide it for you. That's not just a warning, it's reality. He knows that to create change, words are not enough. People must believe. That's why he rarely uses the word I. Every time he speaks, he says we. We will change. We will build. We will write. This spirit of we unites people because now there is no distance between the leader's words and the people's voice. His ideas have turned into youth manifestos in many countries. At every rally, in every social campaign, his quotes are repeated. But Mamdani's goal isn't just to inspire, it's to awaken responsibility. He says, if you're thinking, you've already taken the first step. But if you don't act, then thinking is useless. These words now live on walls, phone screens, even in songs. Every sentence he speaks has become a password for a movement. Because Mamdani understands something profound. Ideas are not bullets, they are seeds. Once planted, they need time to grow. And now, those seeds are sprouting, in streets, in minds, in everyday conversations. People are no longer afraid, they are questioning. And that questioning is the beginning of every great change. Sometimes, to change an era, you don't need weapons or an army. Just one idea, one voice, one person is enough. Mamdani understood this truth long ago. He built a revolution out of silence, in people's minds, in their consciousness, in their way of thinking. Because he knows that the most dangerous kind of change is the one you can't see. Today, when people hear his name, they no longer think only of a politician. They think of an entire school of thought. His ideas are now on the tongues of young people, trending across social media, discussed in universities, and felt in the energy of the streets. Because Mamdani didn't just teach people how to speak, he taught them how to ask. He says, to ask a question is courage, to find an answer is power. And that sentence has now become a philosophy of life for thousands of young people. People have come to understand that change won't come from someone else. You must create it. You must begin it. Mamdani's plan will never end with an election because it was never a political plan. It's a plan of thought. He has planted a new question in everyone's mind. What part of this system can I change? And that question, in truth, is his greatest achievement. Because the thing the system fears most is a person who thinks. He is no longer just a leader, he's a symbol of awakening, freedom, and honesty. His voice now crosses borders because it breaks the fear inside people. He says, if silence protects you, it means you've already been silenced. That idea strikes deeply because everyone, at some point, has stayed quiet, has been afraid, has given up. But now, that silence is breaking. Everywhere, in every language, on every platform, people are starting to speak. This isn't just an ideological movement. It's an emotional eruption. People are realizing that power isn't above them. It's within them. And that realization can change not just a country, but a continent. Mamdani's words cause fear in many circles because he has found the system's weakest point, the moment people begin to think. His ideas are now labeled dangerous, but in history, every truth was once considered dangerous. He knows this risk and accepts it. As he says, if you speak the truth, your enemies will never stay silent. Yes, he broke the silence. He pulled the people out of their quiet obedience and gave them back their voice, their strength, their identity. Now people look at each other and ask, why were we silent for so long? This is no longer just the awakening of a leader. It's the awakening of a generation. Mamdani's voice can be heard everywhere, but most of all, inside people. He once said, if the system doesn't change, then you must become the system. That thought lives on everywhere now. People understand that change isn't someone else's duty. It's their own responsibility. Every time he speaks, people reflect on their lives, their silence, their choices. That is his true purpose, to make people think, because a thinking person cannot be controlled. With that idea, Mamdani shook an entire era. He showed that freedom isn't a grand word. It's simply a decision to say, I am no longer afraid. And thousands of people are now making that decision. Every one of his speeches, his silences, his looks, they've all become a call. Either stay silent or change. People are hearing that call, and they're answering, because history has never remembered the silent ones. Now everyone understands that change has a name, but that name isn't Mamdani. That name is the people. He merely held up the mirror, but seeing who you are inside it, that's your task. He woke you up, but the path ahead is yours to walk. And maybe, by the end of this video, you'll ask yourself one question. What part of this system will I change? Yes, maybe this very moment is when history begins to write your name. Share your thoughts below, because perhaps this time, the beginning of change will be your voice.